I never thought a simple basketball hoop could start a war. It wasn't even one of those big permanent setups with concrete foundations, just a portable hoop I rolled out to the end of my driveway. My son and I had been spending more time together lately, and shooting hoops had become our thing. After long work days, I'd come home, grab a ball, and he'd already be outside waiting with that big smile of his. It was a little slice of joy in a world that never slowed down. But, as you probably guessed, the HOA didn't share my sentiment. One Wednesday morning, I came home to a bright yellow notice taped across my garage door. It was from the Meadow Pines HOA, and in big bold letters it read, "Remove unauthorized basketball hoop within 7 days or face fines." I couldn't help but laugh at first. Of all the things to pick on, they were worried about a hoop? My lawn was trimmed, the house freshly painted, not a weed in sight. But apparently, this hoop was some kind of offense to the aesthetic harmony of the neighborhood. When my son saw the notice, his face fell. "Does this mean we can't play anymore?" he asked, his voice small. That's when the laughter stopped. I called the HOA office that evening, trying to be reasonable. "Look," I said, "it's a portable hoop. We only roll it out a couple hours a day. No one's yard is being blocked. No one's view is ruined. Can't we just leave it alone?" The woman on the other end, clearly reading from a script, told me, "Sir, the rules clearly state that no sporting equipment may be left visible in front yards or driveways. Failure to comply will result in fines of $100 per day." I bit back my frustration. "So you're saying if I leave this hoop out here for my son, you're going to fine me $700 a week?" "That is correct, sir," she replied, flat and emotionless. Click. That was it. I wasn't going to argue with a robot, but I wasn't going to roll over either. Over the next week, I noticed little things. Karen, yes, every HOA has one, kept driving by slowly in her white SUV, glaring at the hoop. Sometimes she'd even take pictures. Neighbors whispered about it, and a couple even told me they liked seeing kids outside again, shooting hoops instead of staring at screens. But when I asked if they'd speak up at the next HOA meeting, they shook their heads. "Not worth the fight," one said. Well, it was worth it to me. On the 7th day, I rolled the hoop back into the garage. My son didn't say a word, just walked inside quietly. That silence hit me harder than any fine ever could. That night, I sat down at my computer and started sketching out an idea. If the HOA didn't want me to have a hoop in my driveway, fine. I'd give them something so big they couldn't ignore it. Something so loud, so unapologetically over the top, that their little yellow notices would look like a joke. I was going to build a basketball arena. Not a professional one, of course. I wasn't crazy. But I owned a chunk of land just outside the HOA boundaries, a property I'd been holding onto as an investment. It wasn't far, just a few miles away. If the HOA hated my one little hoop, they'd really hate what I had in mind next. I called up a contractor friend and told him what I wanted. A covered outdoor court with lights, bleachers, and enough space for a couple hundred people. He laughed at first, thought I was kidding. But when I laid out the cash and blueprints, he knew I wasn't messing around. The next month was chaos. Trucks rolling in, concrete being poured, steel beams going up. Neighbors drove past my land daily, gawking at the massive structure taking shape. Word spread fast, and soon enough Karen herself showed up one afternoon as I was walking the site. "What on earth are you doing?" she demanded, hands on her hips. "Building a basketball court," I said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You can't do this," she snapped. "Actually," I replied, pulling a folded piece of paper from my back pocket, "this land is outside your HOA jurisdiction. I can do whatever I want here." The look on her face was priceless, like she'd just swallowed a lemon whole. She sputtered something about property values and community standards, but I cut her off. "You wanted the hoop gone. It's gone. Now we've got a whole arena instead," she stormed off, probably dialing the HOA board before she even made it back to her SUV. Within days, I had letters in my mailbox accusing me of disrupting neighborhood peace and attracting unwanted visitors. They claimed the arena would increase traffic and pose safety concerns. The irony, of course, was that they had no authority over me out there. Their threats were as empty as their complaints. By the time the arena opened, it was everything I'd imagined. Smooth polished concrete, painted lines, a scoreboard, even concession stands. I invited the whole community to come out for opening night. We didn't just play a game. We hosted a full-on tournament complete with teams, referees, and cheering crowds. My son's face lit up brighter than the arena lights as he dribbled down the court, weaving past defenders, sinking shots while the crowd roared. He wasn't just playing basketball anymore. He was living a dream, and me? I sat in the stands, soaking it all in, thinking about that yellow notice on my garage door. The HOA had wanted to take away our hoop. Instead, they'd inspired something bigger, louder, and impossible to tear down, and this was just the beginning. Opening night at the arena had been such a success that I barely had time to process it before people were already asking, "When's the next one?" Word spread faster than I expected. Friends brought friends, kids told their teammates, and soon families from outside our little neighborhood were showing up. It wasn't just a basketball court, it was a community hub. But where there's joy, there's Karen. The very next morning, I woke to the sound of tires crunching in my driveway. I looked outside, and sure enough, Karen's white SUV was parked there. She got out, clipboard in hand, and marched right up to my porch like she was delivering a court summons. "You think you're clever," she hissed the second I opened the door. I sipped my coffee, leaning casually on the frame. "Morning to you, too." This arena is unacceptable," she spat, waving her hands in the air like the word itself was poison. "You're bringing outsiders into our community. Strangers? Noise, trash! Do you realize what this does to property values?" "Property values, huh?" I said. Funny because I had 3 neighbors thank me last night for giving their kids something positive to do instead of staring at their phones all day. She wasn't listening. Karen never listened. Instead, she shoved a paper into my hand, a cease and desist letter printed on HOA letterhead. "Take it down," she demanded. I glanced at it, then back at her. "This is cute. You do realize that land isn't even under HOA control, right?" For a moment, her face faltered. She knew I was right. But then she squared her shoulders. "We'll see about that." And with that, she stormed off, her SUV screeching away like she was fleeing a crime scene. I knew she wouldn't give up. Karen never gave up. Sure enough, a few days later, I got a visit from a county inspector. Nice guy, but he looked embarrassed. "Sorry about this," he said. "We've had some complaints about zoning and permits." "Let me guess," I said. "Blonde woman, mid-50s, SUV, yells a lot?" He chuckled. "Something like that." Thankfully, I'd done my homework. Every permit was in order, every inspection passed, every form signed in triplicate. When I handed over the neatly organized folder, the inspector smiled. "You're more prepared than half the contractors I meet. I'll file this as compliant. Karen's first attempt to shut me down, a bust, but she wasn't finished." The next HOA meeting was legendary. I wasn't even there, but half the neighborhood filled me in afterward. Apparently, Karen stood up and declared that my arena was a public nuisance and demanded emergency action. A few residents nodded along, but most just stared, unimpressed. One even pointed out that their kids loved playing there and that the HOA should be thanking me instead of fighting me. When Karen threatened to raise everyone's dues to fund a legal fight, the room erupted. Nobody wanted higher fees, especially not for something outside their jurisdiction. The board members shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing that Karen was dragging them into a losing battle, but Karen wasn't one to admit defeat. The next Saturday, during our second tournament, I noticed something strange. A car parked across the street with a camera sticking out the window. I walked over and the driver immediately sped off. Later, another neighbor told me that Karen had been collecting evidence of supposed safety violations. She even claimed the cheering crowd was a noise disturbance. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost, because while she was busy plotting, I was busy building. The arena wasn't just a court anymore. I added lights that could turn night games into spectacles, a scoreboard that lit up like something out of an NBA arena, and even food stands run by local vendors. We had taco trucks, lemonade stands, and kids selling homemade cookies. The place was buzzing with life. And then, the magic happened. A local high school coach showed up one night, curious about the noise. He stayed for an hour, watching kids who had never played on a real team sink shots and hustle down the court. By the end of the evening, he pulled me aside. "You know," he said, "a couple of these kids have real talent. They just need a place to practice. Mind if I bring some scouts down here next month?" I nearly laughed out loud. From a driveway hoop the HOA tried to ban, to a place where real opportunities were being born. Meanwhile, Karen was unraveling. She started sending out angry newsletters accusing me of running an unlicensed business. She plastered warning flyers on mailboxes that said things like, "The arena is dangerous, keep your children away." But the more she fought, the more people turned against her. Neighbors who had once kept their heads down were now openly mocking her. One even set up a parody Facebook group called Fans of the Arena. The page filled up with photos of kids smiling, parents cheering, and Karen scowling in the background. The best part? Local news caught wind of it. One Friday evening, a news van pulled up just as we were hosting our third tournament. A reporter stuck a microphone in my face and asked, "So what made you decide to build all this?" I looked at the camera, smiled, and said, "Honestly, the HOA told me to take down my hoop, so I built something bigger." They wanted silence. We gave the community a voice. That clip went viral. Suddenly, we weren't just the talk of the neighborhood. We were trending online. Karen must have been fuming, but deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. She'd lost every small battle so far, but she was too stubborn to walk away. No, Karen would come back swinging harder than ever, and when she did, I'd be ready. If Karen's anger had been simmering before, after the news coverage, it boiled over into a full-on obsession. She wasn't just annoyed now, she was consumed. The first sign was the petition. One morning, a handful of neighbors found flyers taped to their doors, signed to shut down the illegal arena. Karen had scribbled her name at the top, followed by her husband's, and left several blank lines beneath. Out of curiosity, I asked around later. Guess how many signatures she got? 4. 2 of them were hers. 1 was her husband's, and the last was a neighbor who moved out a week later because he couldn't stand the drama. That should have been the end of it. But Karen wasn't the type to take a hint. One night during a game, as the crowd cheered, I saw flashing lights. Police cruisers rolled up, sirens blaring, and for a moment the kids froze mid-play, clutching the ball like it was contraband. I walked over calmly as 3 officers stepped out. "Evening, gentlemen. Something wrong?" One officer cleared his throat. "We've had multiple noise complaints. Caller says you're disturbing the peace." I sighed and pointed to the families sitting in folding chairs. The parents laughing, the toddlers eating cotton candy, the teenagers shooting hoops under the glow of the new LED lights. "This is a neighborhood tournament. We've got permits. Everything's above board." I handed him my folder again, and after a quick glance, he nodded. "Looks fine to me," he said. Just then, Karen stormed out from across the street, phone in hand. "Officers! Arrest him. He's violating HOA rules." The cops exchanged looks, then one of them said politely, "Ma'am, HOA rules aren't criminal law." The crowd burst into laughter. I'll never forget the look on her face, half fury, half disbelief before she stomped back inside, slamming her door so hard it rattled her windows. From then on, she escalated. She called the fire marshal, claiming our arena was a fire hazard. He came, looked around, and actually praised me for installing proper exits and keeping everything safe. She tried to complain to the county about unlicensed vendors, but the taco trucks and lemonade stands already had the right permits. Every arrow she fired bounced right back, and then came her boldest move yet. It was the night of our biggest event so far, an inter-neighborhood championship game. We had over 300 people gathered, music blasting, kids waving homemade signs. The energy was electric. Just before tip-off, the lights flickered. Then suddenly, darkness, gasps rippled through the crowd. The scoreboard went dead, the court lights vanished, and the arena was plunged into blackness. I grabbed a flashlight and sprinted to the breaker room. Sure enough, the main power switch had been tripped. But here's the thing, it was inside a locked panel. And the lock? Smashed. Somebody had broken in. I didn't need Sherlock Holmes to figure out who. We got the lights back up within 15 minutes, but by then the kids were shaken. The crowd whispered angrily, and all eyes turned toward Karen's house. Her blinds twitched like she'd been peeking out. The next day I filed a report, and this time the police took it seriously. When they questioned Karen, she denied everything, of course. "I was watching TV," she insisted. But the broken lock, the footprints in the mud near the breaker, and a neighbor's ring camera that caught her sneaking around told another story. She wasn't arrested yet, but she was officially warned. And the embarrassment of being caught red-handed spread like wildfire. Instead of sympathy, the neighborhood turned against her. Parents she once gossiped with now crossed the street to avoid her. The HOA board members, tired of her dragging them into mess after mess, quietly started discussing her removal. Kids made up a chant they shouted during games, "Karen can't stop us!" For the first time, Karen wasn't in control. Meanwhile, the arena only grew stronger. The championship game resumed after the blackout, and the crowd's energy doubled, as if the drama had fueled their excitement. The final buzzer ended with a three-pointer that brought everyone to their feet. The cheers were so loud I swear they shook Karen's windows. Afterward, one of the parents came up to me with tears in her eyes. My son has never been part of something like this. He used to struggle with confidence. Now, he feels like a star. Thank you. That's when I realized this wasn't about proving a point to the HOA anymore. It wasn't even about sticking it to Karen. This was about building something bigger than myself. And as I stood there, watching kids laugh and neighbors celebrate, I knew Karen could throw every trick in her book at me. She could call the cops, file petitions, even sabotage the lights, but she couldn't stop what we had started, because this wasn't just a basketball hoop anymore. This was a movement, and it was only going to get bigger. Karen wasn't the type to back down. If anything, her humiliation after the blackout fiasco only pushed her further into obsession. For weeks she stewed in silence, curtains drawn, SUV parked in the driveway like a watchtower. Neighbors joked she was plotting in her war room. Then came the letter. It arrived in my mailbox in a pristine white envelope, HOA letterhead stamped across the top. The message inside was bold, underlined, and dripping with threats. Effective immediately, you are ordered to dismantle your so-called arena. If you fail to comply within 7 days, the HOA will impose fines of $500 per day, pursue legal action, and involve county enforcement. Consider this your final warning. I laughed, out loud. Then I read it again, because I couldn't believe the level of audacity. But here's the kicker. It wasn't signed by the HOA board. It was signed by one person. Karen. The board had nothing to do with it. In fact, when I called them, they sounded exhausted. We've tried to distance ourselves from her, the president admitted. She's gone rogue. That was all I needed to hear. 7 days passed. The arena stood tall, brighter and louder than ever. And on the 8th day, I hosted our largest event yet, the Valley Classic. Hundreds of people poured in. We had local food vendors, a live DJ, kids' activities, and even a three-point contest with cash prizes. It was the biggest block party our town had ever seen. And the energy was off the charts. Of course, Karen showed up. She marched right into the crowd, phone in hand, recording everything like she was building a case for the Supreme Court. She shoved through families, yelling, "This is illegal. He's trespassing on HOA land. Shut it down." Only problem? The land wasn't hers. It wasn't the HOA's, it was mine. Every square inch of it. I had bought it fair and square years ago, and I had the deeds to prove it. So when Karen finally called the cops for the 6th time, the officers didn't just brush her off. They were done. This time, they stood in front of the crowd, held up their hands, and said, "Folks, let's clear something up. This man owns the property. He's within his rights to use it as he sees fit. Unless laws are being broken, we will not interfere." The crowd erupted in cheers. Kids chanted, "We own the court." "We own the court." Parents clapped. Even the officers smiled. And Karen? Her face went pale. For the first time, she realized she had lost, but she wasn't finished yet. 2 days later, I got a notice in the mail, an actual lawsuit. Karen had filed on behalf of herself and concerned residents, demanding that I tear down the arena for disturbing neighborhood peace and lowering property values. I shook my head, then called my lawyer. Court day came fast. The room was packed. Karen strutted in wearing a blazer 2 sizes too small, clutching a stack of papers like she was the prosecutor in a high-profile trial. I sat calmly with my lawyer, deeds and permits neatly organized in a folder. When the judge called us up, Karen launched into a tirade. "Your Honor, this man has single-handedly destroyed the quiet character of our neighborhood. He's turned it into a circus. There are cars, music, cheering children. It's chaos. He must be stopped." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Do you have legal grounds?" Karen fumbled. "Well, the HOA rules clearly state," my lawyer stood. "Your Honor, with respect, the HOA has no jurisdiction over my client's property. It is not part of the association. Furthermore, every activity he has conducted has been legally permitted, inspected, and approved. I have documentation here. The judge reviewed the papers, flipped through the permits, and nodded. Seems solid. Karen's face turned red. But he's ruining everything. The judge leaned forward. Ma'am, your personal grievances are not legal grounds. Unless you have evidence of actual violations, I see no case here. Bang. Gavel. Case dismissed. Karen stormed out, muttering threats under her breath, but it was over. The arena was untouchable. Word spread fast. Local news picked up the story. Neighborhood man defeats HOA bully, builds community arena. The coverage brought even more families, sponsors, and support. Within weeks, I had volunteers offering to expand the arena. A local company donated new bleachers. Another pitched in for a scoreboard upgrade, and the kids, they flourished. We started youth leagues, weekend tournaments, and even charity games that raised money for local schools. The arena became more than a court. It became the heart of the community. Karen, meanwhile, faded into the background. Her neighbors stopped talking to her. The HOA board quietly voted her out, and eventually, a for sale sign popped up in her yard. She couldn't take the heat anymore. The day she drove away for the last time, a game was in full swing. The kids waved goodbye sarcastically, chanting, "Bye, Karen! Bye, Karen." Her SUV sped off and she was gone. As for me, I stood at the center of the court, whistle around my neck, watching the game unfold under the bright lights. Parents cheered, kids laughed, and the sound of bouncing basketballs echoed through the night. It had started with one hoop. One simple hoop in my driveway that Karen tried to take away. But now? Now it was an arena. A sanctuary. A symbol that no bully, HOA or otherwise, could crush the spirit of a community. I grinned, tossing the ball to a group of eager kids. "All right," I shouted. "Next game, winners stay on." The crowd roared, the ball soared through the air, and I knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning.